Today, we are talking about all things pleasure. I am Dr. Reena Malik, urologist and pelvic surgeon, and today I am bringing you a collaboration with this amazing human being, Leeza Mangaldas. She is a sex content creator who focuses on pleasure, and she is an Indian celebrity. She's been on Vogue, Elle, GQ, so many Indian platforms, and she's got over 1 million followers on all her social platforms. So make sure you check her out on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. You guys will love this interview we did together and learn so much. We talk about how to increase pleasure in the bedroom, how to pleasure your partner, how to deal with mismatched libidos, and so much more. And make sure to stick around till the end because we talk about the questions that you guys have so commonly asking about, is a vibrator going to replace me, and how can I use porn in my relationship? So make sure you stick around till the end. Leeza, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to have you on our channel.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and I love your videos.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I love yours too, and I'm just so happy that we're doing this finally. So, I wanted to start off talking, since you are like the guru of pleasure, what should people focus on for pleasure, for being able to pleasure their partner?
I think that a lot of us inherit very heteronormative ideas around sex that are very limiting because they also tend to be entirely centered around the penis, penetration, right? Most of us still define sex as penetration, penis in vagina equals sex, when really sex can be so many things, right? Oral sex is sex. I mean, sex can be whatever you want it to be, really. It's intimacy between you and your partner, or even alone. There's so many aspects to sexual pleasure actually that have nothing to do with penetration. And I think for starters, like recognizing that there's more to sex than penetration would be wonderful for more men to do, because the vulva, actually, I feel the people don't recognize that the clitoris is much more central to the pleasure of most vulva owners than the vaginal canal, right? So penetration, penis in vagina, is often not so pleasurable for people with vulvas. It is, in a way, kind of ignoring the primary center of pleasure altogether, right? Which is why so many vulva owners don't experience orgasm from penetration alone. I mean, statistically, it's found that the clitoris is the far more reliable route to orgasm for most vulva owners, and yet most straight couples approach sex, totally ignorant of this, or sort of as if it's an afterthought. Even the word foreplay kind of suggests that all of this other stuff is optional, right? And penetration is the real deal. So I feel like first shifting that focus, and prioritizing all kinds of intimacy rather than just penetration is likely to lead to more pleasure. I also think we kind of are trained to see men and women as playing these different roles during sex. Like women are posited as the gatekeepers and men are posited as the predators. It's
Yeah.
almost like, as a woman, it's not womanly to want sex or to like sex, and it's not manly to not want or not like sex, as if the sort of transaction that's happening is that the man is taking and the woman is reluctantly giving. And I think that's also really harmful. Like, I
Absolutely.
think that we need to remove that gendered conditioning. Firstly, gender isn't even only binary, right? I hope we can all also expand our understanding of gender and sexuality, and sort of unchain ourselves from the heteronormativity and rigid gender binary that conditions our attitudes.
Oh
But
yeah,
also, I think this
absolutely.
idea of like women as reluctant participants and men as aggressors is really limiting and damaging. And it would be wonderful if sex was a shared and equal experience, right? And yet I
Mhm.
feel like as women, often we feel like we're going to be judged or shamed by a male partner if we seem sexually expressive or communicative, and so we kind of hold back. And I think, similarly, sometimes men might not be able to express vulnerability or reluctance, or say they're not in the mood,
Yeah.
or talk about their body insecurities. So it really serves nobody. Like, these gender stereotypes don't actually help anyone, not even men. So I think that's another thing that can really contribute to a more expansive and pleasurable sexual life.
I think that as a practical tip for, as I said, for again, we're talking in heteronormative terms, but this can apply in any sexual relationship. But if the person in the relationship or the man who is typically, seen as predatory or who's always asking for sex, if you can encourage your partner to say like, hey, it really turns me on when you initiate or you're excited about it or you take the lead, I think that can help give your partner the confidence to do that more often.
Yeah, absolutely. I think communication is so central. I mean, if I had to only give one tip, I would say communicate.
Yeah.
I think so often partners don't actually talk about sex, even if they're having sex.
Yeah.
And they don't talk about sex outside of the actual act of sex. Like maybe there's some communication while you're having sex, but it can actually be really valuable to talk about sex, to talk about what turns you on, to talk about how you're feeling. And for intimacy and sex to be something that you're able to openly communicate about honestly,
Yeah.
even when you're not actually having sex. It can be easier to talk about maybe some of your concerns or confusions or how you're feeling if you're just sitting and talking, as opposed to like, having to deal with the pressure of either disappointing or hurting your partner while they're on top of you because you don't feel a certain way or you're not enjoying yourself. So I think communication is so central. And then I was going to just give a very practical tip for the third one, or just an easy little tip. I feel like lube is the unsung
Oh, yeah.
hero of better sex for everybody. And you don't have to be older or, experiencing dryness in particular to use lube. Lube is for everybody. I mean, of course, it can help in those scenarios, but I feel like lube just makes sex more fun, reduces
So good.
friction. If pain during sex is an issue, it can often help alleviate that. And I mean, you just got to try it, even
Oh
during
my God,
masturbation.
yes,
It just makes everything
100%.
better.
100%. So I have a whole video on lubricant, and I am a huge lubricant proponent. There's so many different kinds out there: water-based, aloe-based, which is similar to water-based. There's silicone-based, there's oil-based, and they all have different, benefits. And you should experiment, try them all. And if you don't want to go to the store and buy lube, go to the kitchen, try coconut oil, try olive oil. These things are like so helpful and can really enhance your sexual pleasure for both parties. So, 100% agree with that.
I just want to say though that unfortunately in India, sometimes these oils that are marketed not for internal use, like coconut oil is often a hair oil here. So
Oh,
be
yeah.
careful
Yeah,
about the ingredients. Use a pure coconut oil because often the hair
exactly.
oils have paraffin in them.
Yes.
So if you're new to lube, like using sexual lube, especially in India, because it's a product with less availability, access, and education around it, I would just say like look at the ingredients, make sure what you're using is body safe. You don't want to use a general moisturizer or just some sort of cold cream or something that's meant for
Yeah.
external use.
Yeah, great point. And no Vaseline either. That's not safe, not great. So things absolutely important to avoid. A lot of household products, but certainly,
Yes,
clean oils like 100% natural
pure
oils are
coconut oil.
safe.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
totally.
then I wanted to go back to your point about, clitoral sensitivity or using the clitoris. The reason actually the clitoris is how almost 95% of women achieve orgasm. And when you look at the studies, they'll say it's, less than that, but it's actually the women who did achieve orgasm with intercourse or penetration actually also had clitoral stimulation. So it's almost 95% of women that need some sort of clitoral stimulation, and the reason for that is that the head of the clitoris is analogous embryologically, meaning that when you're developing as a fetus, before you get a penis or a clitoris, they're the same. They're exactly the same. So the head of the penis is like the clitoris. And so that's
Yes.
why, women derive so much pleasure from that. And, men can kind of look at that and say, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think that's such a wonderful sort of fact. I love sharing that as well, that before sexual differentiation, the genital tubercle is essentially the same tissue that turns into either a penis or a clitoris. And in so many ways, they are analogous. There's a head and a shaft and a little foreskin and a hood, and they both become engorged with blood when erect. And I just think that when people think of the penis and sex, I mean, it's like you can't imagine one without the other, right? And
Yeah.
yet the clitoris remains this like secret. Everybody knows you need focused and attentive, deliberate stimulation of the penis
Yes.
to make a man orgasm. And yet no one thinks about the fact that Similarly, you just need deliberate and focused attention to the clitoris. I feel like women's pleasure would be so much less elusive and mysterious if we just knew this. Like we're told women's pleasure is difficult, it's complicated, it's going to take longer, it's just inherently more tricky, you know? But I feel like actually we don't get clear and accurate messaging about how our bodies work in relation to pleasure. So of course it seems mysterious, but it's not that difficult once you know.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice do you have for people who maybe are in a relationship where they really have a high libido and their partner has less of a libido or lower libido? I mean, I think that can be really challenging I mean, typically we see that societally as a male having high libido and a female having low libido, but I've seen it in both directions. So, do you have advice for people who are struggling with that?
I think it's so important that you noted that it can be in both directions because indeed I feel like the gender has less to do with the problem. It's just a very common sort of situation that I think if we're absolutely honest, almost all couples will feel some degree of that. Like sometimes I want sex and maybe my partner doesn't. Sometimes they want sex, maybe I don't. That's a very normal thing for any relationship to encounter, right? Especially if it's a long-term relationship, whether it's from a day-to-day basis, in the sense I could be really stressed out today and not be in the mood, and my partner might really be in the mood, to a more um, sort of if you're zooming out, just generally one person wants more sex than the other. So I think firstly it's very common, and know that you're not alone. Like I think many people feel like they can't talk about this or feel kind of like they don't know what to do, and as if it's an unsolvable problem, and they can't tell anyone. I feel like it's actually very common, and we'd all benefit from being more open and honest about the fact that we go through these sorts of situations in our relationships. And I think communication is so central to figuring this out together, because I think it's unfair to expect either well, certainly to expect the partner who might not be feeling particularly sexual to just have sex with you because you want it, right? That's
Right.
a lot to ask. And yet I feel like if you're able to talk about this openly, you can also think about what intimacy is for you. Is not enough sex meaning not enough penetration, or is it not enough cuddles? Is it not enough just close and vulnerable time together? I feel like thinking about what you're missing and how you can both if you're both committed to making this work and sort of meeting each other's emotional and physical requirements and all of that, talking about how you can both do things that work for both of you in ways that kind of you know provide a middle ground. So I think talking is so important. Many people just don't bring it up, end up like not being able to approach the subject, and in a way that only makes things worse. But I also think that in a practical sense, some people think scheduling sex is very unromantic or weirdly clinical or
Yeah.
something. But it's often suggested as a solution because our lives can just, I mean, modern life is so hectic and so sort of, I feel like it takes you away from anything that is a source of pleasure, right? You're
A
always worried
hundred
about
percent.
bills and work and all of this stuff. And in a funny kind of way, when you're dating someone and you're not living together, anyway, you used to have to schedule sex in a way, right? You plan to
Yeah.
have a date on Saturday, or you plan, and so then you can make the time for that, right? And you're going more likely to allow yourself to be in that headspace on that day if you anticipating it. It's funny, but we have to schedule everything now. So I
Oh
personally
yeah.
think that couples, especially if you're in a long-term relationship and you live together, sex can just sort of fall off your priority list because you have so many other things to do. The
Yeah,
kids and the
absolutely.
laundry and all of this stuff. So in a weird kind of way, as unromantic as it sounds, I think it's actually something worth trying, scheduling sex so both parties know that they're going to make the time for this and try and make it special and make it a priority, right? Because spontaneity, while it's amazing, it isn't that easy to stop everything else that you're doing when you have so many other things to do, and then sometimes it just doesn't happen.
I think that scheduling sex is a great tip because, as you said, it's something to look forward to. It's exciting and it's like, okay, I've put this on my schedule and hey, I'm gonna like get busy on Saturday and it's gonna be great and I can't wait, right? You get excited and I think this idea of spontaneous desire is so overplayed by the media, right? Like you see someone of the who is attractive to you, you get super excited, you want to jump them and have sex, right? But that's not reality, right? As especially, as your hormones change over your lifetime, that spontaneous desire becomes less and less frequent, and you actually need to, the desire comes with a little bit of time. You need to like lie together or touch each other and kind of just be with each other and allow that desire to come. But it actually takes some premeditated effort that, hey, we're gonna like be intimate or be close before there'll be any sort of sexual contact, so that you can actually start getting that desire. And that's normal, 100% normal. There's nothing wrong with you if you don't look at your husband or partner or whatever wife and say, oh my god, I want to jump them right now. Like that's completely normal, and I think that that needs to be portrayed too much more frequently, and it's very poorly shown in media.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I was just going to say was that, at least in India, this overemphasis on fidelity, to the extent that like people even might think that, your partner masturbating is cheating on you.
Absolutely.
Um, and I really think we need to rethink that stuff. Masturbation is a self-soothing behavior, and it's a wonderful and easy way to sort of provide yourself with pleasure or some sort of sexual release when you want that. And I think even when you're in a relationship, it's perfectly normal and healthy to also masturbate. And I think especially when there's a mismatch in libido, being able to also, sort of explore your own body and pleasure and sexuality solo sometimes is a healthy way to release some of that sort
Absolutely.
of sexual
Very-
energy that you might want an outlet for. So I
yeah.
highly recommend people being open to their partners continuing to have like, a self pleasure ritual if they're in a monogamous equation, and if they're open to non-monogamy, of course, that's another thing. Ethical non-monogamy, I feel, is getting more visibility and more understanding, and it's a lifestyle choice or relationship structure that more and more people are exploring. So that is another thing that, if partners are open to looking into, could be a potential sort of arena to explore.
Right, absolutely. And the benefits to masturbation are so many: stress relief, reduction in blood pressure, just so many great, wonderful benefits, and like a release of feel good hormones in the body. And I think that, it's great to explore your body, learn more about what makes you excited, what gives you pleasure, so that you can kind of pass that information on to your partner, so that you guys can use that in your intimate relationship. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. If you choose not to, that's fine too. But there really, doesn't need to be any guilt or shame behind masturbation. I think that the other thing I wanted to touch on is, you do need to be in the right headspace for sex, whether it's a male, female, them, they, her, whatever you identify as. Everyone needs to be in the right headspace for having intercourse, intimacy, whatever. And so, do you have any tips on kind of getting your partner in the right headspace?
I think it's one of my favorite things to do is to give each other a massage. I think it can be so relaxing. Firstly, I find that arousal is much more likely to happen if I am feeling relaxed.
Absolutely.
It is hard to be in the mood if you're thinking about 15 other things, right? And if you're stressed out, which most of us always are, I feel like it's a symptom of modern life, then
Yeah.
actually, like, physically feeling relaxed can actually really help with mentally feeling relaxed. So I love a back massage or a shoulder, back and shoulder, neck kind of situation. I feel like it just eases the tension, literally, physically, and then therefore also mentally. So this is what my partner and I have started doing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's awesome. And I think trying also, like, if like if you schedule sex, right, you can kind of get yourself in the mood, read an erotic novel or do something that gets you kind of in the mood. And that can be really helpful, because then you're like ready to go, super excited, and it makes for a more enjoyable sexual encounter.
And interestingly, even working out, like if you go for a run together beforehand, I think just getting it's our bodies and our brains are more connected, I feel, than we think about, or than we acknowledge. And it's funny, but even just breathing, like you know, getting the blood flowing, getting your heart rate up and your breathing, sort of inhaling and exhaling at the way that you would if you're going on a run or if you're meditating. Most people find it hard to meditate though, which is why I say go for a run, because I feel like it can it can have the similar sort of physical effect of relaxation when you're done with your run,
Yeah.
as you might feel from meditating as well, just from that breathing, and it's funny, but it can really get you in the mood. If you're physically feeling relaxed and energized, it's more likely that your mind is at ease as well.
I want to get to a couple questions that my audience always asks about. And one is, if they buy a toy for their partner, or if their partner is using a toy to reach climax, is that going to replace them?
No, I think, I really, it's 2021. I think we should be totally good with bringing vibrators into the bedroom. I think that it's technology, a vibrator or any kind of sex toy, whether it vibrates or not, is essentially just a technology that exists. Technically, even a pillow is technology, right? I
Yeah.
mean, maybe if people use their hand as a pillow, now we have a pillow. So I feel like anything that makes a task easier and more efficient and, makes your life better is technology. And sex toys are technology, and we should embrace them. They're wonderful. And particularly for vulvas, I just think vibrators are incredibly effective at providing clitoral stimulation. The what a vibrator can do is not humanly possible at that speed and consistency and for that duration. So it's not even a, I mean, does an accountant consider a calculator competition? No, but it's like hugely helpful in making the workday more efficient. And I feel like similarly, we should
Yeah.
embrace this technology. It eases also the pressure on the partner in a way, right? I mean, I feel like so many men write to me being like, I don't know if I can satisfy my partner. I wonder whether I can last long enough. I wonder what,
Yeah.
and why should it, firstly, I think that all of those ideas around sex, as I said earlier, they don't serve men, they don't serve anybody really. So I think we need to rethink sex. But I also think sex tech can bring a lot of pleasure to all parties and alleviate performance anxiety for everyone, and we should be using them. And yet they can't replace you. A vibrator can't give you a hug or call you on your birthday, as the famous scene in Sex and the City. I don't know if you remember it, around the rabbit vibrator. They
Yeah.
discussed it. But no, it can't replace a loving partner, of course not. I do think though that um, if all you're getting from a relationship is sex, then perhaps once you have a toy, you're going to rethink how much casual sex is really worth it. At least that happened for me. And I think in a way that's a nice thing, because to some extent I feel like many young people almost use each other as like vehicles in which to masturbate, which is okay. But I mean, do I really want to disrupt my vaginal pH for some dude who doesn't even know where my clitoris is? Not really. you know so I think that if the only value you're providing to your partner is sexual, and that too all you're concerned about is your pleasure, then okay, maybe when she gets a vibrator she might stop calling you. But hopefully that isn't all the value you're providing, and it surely can't replace a
Yeah.
human being.
Yeah, I think the only caveat I would add is absolutely masturbation is excellent, but if you become very accustomed to one way to climax, so if you're masturbating every single day with very aggressive vibrators or hand stimulation, and that may be something that your body becomes accustomed to, and that's okay, but it may make it harder for other means to get you to reach the same climax. So just being aware of that, I think, as that can happen in relationships, and that's normal, and just to kind of be cognizant of that and not take it personally if that happens in your relationship.
Yes, and actually, I think it's important not to compare the two things. Like, I think it's important to recognize that what certain toys can do is simply not humanly possible.
Yeah.
And so to expect that, I think, I was joking a little bit earlier. I was talking in a lighthearted way, but I think that, as you said, yeah, it's really important to recognize that partnered sex might, or even masturbation with your fingers instead of a toy, might not be able to provide the intensity of stimulation as an electronic device, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like, I mean, email is great, but a handwritten letter is also wonderful, right? And it's
Yeah.
nice to be able to appreciate both experiences instead of comparing them or expecting your partner, or I don't know, the expecting one or the other to be better or to meet the, I feel like it isn't a competition, and
Yeah.
it's nice to appreciate partnered sex for what it is, and masturbation with a vibrator for what it is. But it's also fun to bring a vibrator into the bedroom now and then, is all I was
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely, and be open to that. I think it adds so much fun to the experience. Last question, because I don't want to go too long, but there's a lot of concern about watching pornography. Is it good? Is it bad? And I think there is a great way to use it in a healthy manner. And so, do you have tips to incorporate using that in your relationship in a healthy way?
I think it's if you're someone who watches porn and enjoys watching porn, I think it can be great to just be mindful of what you're consuming. You want to be consuming something that's ethically produced, right? You want nobody's consent to have been violated in order for you to experience pleasure. So I'm a big proponent of ethical porn. There's a whole bunch of indie adult filmmakers who are ensuring that the production of the content is ethical, in the sense that performers' rights are protected, and safe and professional working environments are created, and performers have a say in what they're doing, and consent is very explicitly indicated. And I think that's really important, because there's so many free porn sites where there's like revenge porn or some sort of non-consensually created materials. Either the clip was the act consensual, was it consensually filmed, was it consensually shared? So often you really don't know.
Yeah.
And yet there are sites making those things very clear. They're also aiming to provide a more nuanced and sort of equal portrayal of sex. I think so often mainstream porn is like, by men, for men, with this very like cis white male gaze kind of informing the way that sex is presented, informing the way that any other type of identity is presented. The titles will like fetishize certain races and body types, and often it's very violent and misogynistic. And so I think that ethical porn tries to address all of those issues by having, a lot more equal representation on the pleasure of people other than men as well, women's pleasure, queer people's pleasure. It's often women and queer people directing and creating this content. So I really think looking for better porn is a great step in ensuring that you're reaping the benefits of what erotic material can provide to your sex life, instead of the problems that it can also bring forth, right? I feel like porn
Yeah.
is one of those things that has many pleasures, but also many issues. Obviously, it's one of the safest ways to experience sexual pleasure, porn and masturbation. No infection, no pregnancy, no rejection, right? So it can be a very healthy outlet to explore your curiosities and fantasies and all of that. But much of mainstream porn also has all these issues. So yeah, make sure you're watching ethical porn if you're
Yeah,
watching
and
porn.
and absolutely make sure that it's not disrupting your normal, like, porn addiction is a real problem. And I think that if you find that you're watching so much porn that it's disrupting your daily activities, something to definitely be mindful of. And also, if you're watching porn and having this expectation of what your sex life is going to be like, well, porn is a produced product, right? It is augmented with visual effects, and it's very not realistic. So I think just realizing that for a lot of people can be very helpful. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I will absolutely link everything that Leeza does. She has over 1 million followers across all her platforms. So I'll link all of her social platforms. Check out her YouTube channel. And thank you guys so much for watching. As always, remember to take care of yourself because you're worth it.